Well, hello again, everybody. This is John Norris of Trading Perspectives. As always, we have our good friend Sam Clement. Sam, say hello.
John, how are you doing?
Sam, I'm doing pretty well. Thank you for asking. Now, last night I missed out on a wonderful opportunity.
What was that?
Well, a buddy of mine named David texted me sort of late in the day and asked me if I wanted his tickets to go see a concert. A group here in town was playing over at the Avondale Brewery, and the name of the group was the Violent Femmes. Ever heard of the Violent Femmes?
I can't say I have, John.
All right. A group from the early to mid 1980s were popular at the time. And you know something? Free tickets are free tickets, but I turned them down. However, tickets that I didn't turn down, but tickets that I actually paid about $75 for, decent seats at the Alabama Theater down in downtown Birmingham, I'm going to go see Morrissey. Do you know who Morrissey is?
Sounds a little more familiar.
Well, I tell you, he was the lead singer of a group called the Smiths, which was real popular during the 1980s, and he's gone on to have a pretty decent solo career. I tell you all this type of stuff because it doesn't seem like that long ago I wasn't spending anywhere near the amount of money people were asking for concert tickets, sporting events. All of these ways to entertain ourselves had just gone through the roof.
Well, and it's not that surprising in the scheme of things when you're talking about inflation and just prices as a whole have gone up. Really starting since COVID. I mean, especially the last 2 years really is where we've seen the official inflation data take off. So that portion of it isn't surprising.
But can inflation alone count for all of it?
No, and that's what I'm getting at is that, so you have that piece of it, everything's gone up in prices, but, other items like we've talked about, eggs and butter and milk and what have you, bread.
Making a cake?
Is more, sure, is more expensive, but you're not getting that, oh my gosh, as much as you are, and part of it's just the absolute values of this, but concert tickets for nosebleeds, the top concerts in Birmingham, nosebleed tickets are several $100s, and sporting event tickets, I mean, these so games you used to be able to almost buy tickets for $10, $20, just something to get in the stadium.
Yeah.
50, 100, and it's crazy.
And then if you go to a reseller like StubHub, it's anyone's best guess what you're going to get.
Right.
And so when I'm sitting around taking a look at things, I just harken back to Sam back in the day. I've already mentioned talking about turning down tickets to go see a group called the Violent Femmes and going to go see Morrissey when he comes here in town. Looking forward to that. But I'm so old. My God, I'm old, Sam. It just kills me. That I remember that Birmingham used to get all kinds of awesome concerts coming in through town, because this was back in the day when groups or singers, performers, what have you, toured to support the album.
Mm-hmm.
The
albums were where the money came from.
Albums were where the money was easily where the money came from. And one of the best concerts I saw growing up, believe it or not, was $10, which even back in the day was a pretty decent price for decent entertainment. Maybe it was $5. It was cheap. To go hear a guy named Eddie Money play at the Oak Mountain Amphitheater. Ever heard of Eddie Money?
I have.
All right. Well, that kind of surprises me, but I wasn't expecting too much out of Eddie, and apparently not a lot of other people were either, because that thing seats, about 12,000, 13,000?
I've actually never been to the Oak Mountain
really?
Amphitheater.
Okay. Well, it's closing.
It can't go anymore. So.
And so, let's say it seats 12,000. There was maybe 5,000 people there that night. Apparently, a lot of other people were thinking the same thing I did, paid $5, $10 for general ad, and Eddie apparently wanted to play and said, all right, everyone in the grass, and this was grass seating lawn back then, said, come on down to the front, ushers let him down, and he went on to play one hell of a show. Now, I tell you that because I'm no big fan of Eddie Money's. That's the only thing he's ever made money on me. He's dead now, by the way, but the thing about it is, I didn't spend it, but that was like a legitimate thing to do for the night.
Yeah.
Kind of last minute, I'm going to go see a concert. And this guy's a pretty big star. He's not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but too big for a bar mitzvah, not big enough to get on an American Bandstand, that sort of type guy. And, we went there because it was legitimate. It wasn't so much. Now, you tell me, how many people are just going, you know what, I think I'm going to go see Taylor Swift tonight.
Yeah, it's you have all these different forces kind of working at once. We've talked about this with sporting events. Less people maybe going to some, more people going to others, and focus on smaller venues.
Dumbfounded.
Music, one of these forces is that, exactly like you mentioned, these the concerts are big money drivers. It's less about selling the album now.
Well, I mean,
they're focused on these.
Do they even sell albums
Yeah,
now?
yeah, right. And you don't make much money comparatively off streaming, and so you have to focus on that and the profit around that largely. And then
haven't they?
And then we're in a market where you're not getting as many big artists, and when you are, everybody wants to go to the big artist.
Well,
you're not getting a Taylor Swift in Birmingham, but if you...
Well, why would she come to Birmingham, which is a nice-sized metropolitan area, about the same size as Buffalo, believe it or not, for people listening here.
But we don't have an NFL stadium.
We don't have an NFL stadium, and also... Why should she do that when she can play 3-4 nights in Atlanta?
Sure.
Have people from Birmingham, Huntsville, Greenville, maybe even Columbia, Macon. All these people will travel a couple hours to go see this.
Oh yeah, people fly
Augusta,
across the country.
So she can get a whole bunch of geographic areas or population centers just by playing several nights in a bigger city. She did that with Nashville. I think she played a couple shows there. And so that's the sort of thing that's happening. It's a real shame because, Birmingham's a big enough city where the major acts would come through town. Seriously. And now it's, I'd say we rarely get the A acts, but we get like maybe the B.
Yeah, sometimes some A with country, more so.
Sometimes they'll show up, but, Beyonce didn't come through here. Taylor Swift didn't come through here. Coldplay hadn't played here since 2008. That sort of type thing. So, I go through all this, and not really to talk about Birmingham and its concert pass, although we're halfway done, and that's all we've talked about. It's really just... It's kind of a disconnect. We've talked about here and then also in the newsletter about the disconnect American people have between the stated official economic data, which is pretty good, and what they think their personal experience is, which seems to be pretty poor. And so they tout things like the eggs you were mentioning at the grocery store, how expensive they are, milk, all these things. I remember when you get $100 worth of groceries and 1,000 bags. That sort of type deal. Now it's just one little plastic bag. People will complain and bitch about having to spend that much money on these sorts of things, but then. Hey, buddy, Taylor Swift's coming to town.
Thousands.
You ready to drop a couple of G?
Yeah.
Their G.
Go out to the...
I'm so hip hop. And then also sporting events.
Yeah.
No matter how big my television is, no matter how clear, crystal clear, Sam, nothing but the best. 65, 75-inch televisions, you can almost get life-size sort of type deal. And sit in the comfort of your own home in the air conditioning, and yet on any given Saturday here in the state of Alabama, 105,000 people in Bryant-Denny. I think it's officially 101,800, something like that, down in Bryant-Denny, which is the home stadium for the University of Alabama Crimson Tide, and 85 to 88 down at Auburn, down at Jordan Harris Stadium. That's not even the stadiums down in Troy, Mobile, Jacksonville, even here in Birmingham, and people are willing to spend top dollar on this. The prices on the tickets themselves are so much more expensive than what they used to be. And then for big games like a SEC game for Alabama versus LSU or Auburn versus Georgia, one of those type things, Lord knows you're spending hundreds of dollars on this. I've got friends of mine who have season tickets to Alabama, and they say that they pay for it, it costs an arm and a leg, and they make it all up just by selling one big game a year.
Yeah.
They'll always go to Auburn, but maybe they'll sell Tennessee, maybe they'll sell LSU, and it pays for the remainder of the season. So again, I'm going through all this because what people were saying about, the eggs are so expensive, and how they're really spending their money, the bigger ticket items, that's a huge disconnect because people were spending money like crazy in order to go to these things, as is evidenced by Taylor Swift's never-ending Eras tour.
Why should she?
Why should we? Yeah, periodically she goes to Kansas City on Sunday, but the rest of the time she's traveling around the world making millions. So what is this? A concert that lasts 3 years?
Well, I think the big part of it, and I mentioned all these different forces in this space, but the big one that's defining all of this is the change in consumption habits for Americans, and that we have not really seen that change a whole lot. We've talked about travel and the booming, European vacation, which the joke is everyone seems to have gone on last summer.
Wow.
That's a bummer. but the people are spending more and more and are fine stretching their budget more on these experiences, and that's been the part that it's had a lot of staying power in terms of what people are willing to do and where they're willing to sacrifice. And it seems like they're continuing to not be willing to sacrifice trips, concerts, sporting events, what have you.
Going fly fishing. I mean, just even upper tier golf courses. These types of things just seem to be groaning in popularity.
Yeah, and that just seemingly has been a large shift in the consumption habits, and that's been a big problem with some of the economic data we look at. There's such a focus on manufacturing and some of these data points. Well, if we're moving from a manufacturing and goods heavy economy to a services heavy economy, which we already are, but if that's continuing to
if we go from services to experiences, what does that look like?
Right, and how is that picked up in the data? And for a lot of it isn't picked up, and so you get this disconnect in data, you get this disconnect in inflation, because if this is what the government's saying your average budget looks like, but hey, I'm willing to not eat out as much to go to this concert or go to this sporting event, how is that really picked up in it?
Well, I think you bring up a good point, a great point, and it begs the questions, I guess it is, one, just how much does the BLS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which does the Employment Situation Report, as well as the Consumer Price Index, how much does it need to change its methodology on just about every major release that it does? And then second of all, okay, I hear what you're saying, changing consumption patterns from manufactured goods, which we've got plenty of those now, services, maybe even too much of that, to experiences, arguably not enough. With each one, you have to wonder, what's the true economic multiplier effect of someone playing golf relative to someone spending the same amount of money on a television?
Right.
So
you don't have that probably as much of that layer. If I'm buying something, that means someone's getting the cash, they're buying parts for it, what have you, and it goes down and down the line.
Yeah. So would you say that my spending $1 zillion to go float down a lazy river has the same type of economic impact as my buying something of tangible value?
Probably not, and I think concerts and things of that nature probably fit into that boat at least somewhat. I mean, it's probably in between buying goods and floating down the river, but if you're going to a concert, okay, a large chunk of that's going to the production company.
Yeah.
They have some employees, sure. I mean, I'm not saying it's all just sitting in a bank account.
Well, it's going to Taylor Swift. It's going to...
Yeah.
Well, it's not going to Eddie Money. You know why?
I think I know why.
Why is that?
Because he's dead.
Yeah. that's right.
My point is, it's not... You don't have this same velocity of money.
No, you don't have the same velocity of money anywhere near.
No.
So, arguably, could you say that could slow our economy down moving forward if we're spending an increasingly sizable chunk of our money on things to entertain us in the short term? Because essentially, I mean, we're looking at something that's almost immediately consumable, as opposed to something that has tangible value that's going to last 6-12 months, a durable good. So do you think that could potentially slow down our economy, or actually, strangely enough, speed it up?
I think it depends on where the cuts are coming from for this, and what the turnover, this velocity of the money is once it is spent in these categories. I think that's really important. If you're just, this could be compared to, the government, the Federal Reserve, the point of inflation is to get people to go out and spend money and turn money over. If your spending habits change in a way that reduces that velocity of money, that's going to be detrimental to economic growth in the long run.
So, what are some of the things that you will save up for in order to spend an extravagant amount upon and save by not buying your eggs at Publix or something along those lines?
Well, I don't buy. We talked about this. No, try not to buy too much at Publix, but for me, trips are the thing. I'm not a concert person.
Well, you like both types of music, don't you?
Yeah, I like country and western, but that's to me. Again, especially these Birmingham concerts. There's a few I've seen they're coming to Birmingham. That sounds awesome. Let's get in the ticket line for it online. and the nosebleeds are $300-$400. That means I'm out $800 for 2 tickets. And to me, for concerts, that's not really worth it. I can get good deals.
Well, you're probably going to want to have a couple beers and get something to eat.
Beers
and so Uber back and forth, and
you're out $900, $1,000 for not that great of tickets.
You see Chris Stapleton,
or I get some good flights, and that gets me 2 round trip flights to London. I'd rather do that.
Well, I hear you.
And I get you have more expenses on top of that, not just getting there, but if I can get there, I'd rather do that.
Now, I got to tell you, my $75 tickets to go see Morrissey are not going to set me back. It's not like I'm trying to go see Chris Stapleton or some of the other acts that will come through Birmingham. But I hear what Sam's saying, and one of the things that I do like to spend money on in terms of entertainment value, I do like to go watch live music. I haven't seen as many shows this year because this year the nostalgia tours really haven't come through Birmingham quite so much. I mean, last year we saw Peter Frampton. I saw
Hootie, didn't you?
I saw. Well, it seems like I see Hootie all the time. Saw Driving and Crying. Saw who else? The Connells. So some bands that you've just. I'm making up names right now as far as you're concerned.
Yeah.
This year I've seen Hootie and the Blowfish. We actually traveled to Boston to go see that. And I mentioned. I think this is the 5th time I'm going to mention Morrissey. Just, that's kind of how I like to spend sort of my entertainment dollar. I don't care if I ever go see another football game at Bryant-Denny or Jordan-Hare. I really don't. Maybe I'll make it up to Grove Stadium in Winston-Salem periodically, but the tickets there aren't what they are down in Tuscaloosa or Auburn. And so when I'm taking a look at things that I like to splurge upon in terms of entertainment, in terms of all these things, these experiences, if you will, travel is fantastic. I wouldn't mind traveling more, and then also live music as well. So, however, if I'm spending, this is more of a personal thing as opposed to a generational thing, or even an economics thing. If I'm spending, you remember last year I went to go see U2. I traveled to go see them in Las Vegas at the Sphere.
Yep.
If I'm spending that amount of money, I'm not going to tell you how much, but my trip to Las Vegas that I went to go see U2. Do I have any right to come back and complain about how much Mexico Lindo is?
You do, I think, but probably less than someone who couldn't go to Mexico Lindo and definitely wasn't going to Vegas. I mean, I don't think that's hey, you did something fun.
Listen,
Shut your trap.
If I'm spending $150 plus in order to go see an obscure, British musician, can I complain about how much the eggs are at Publix?
I still think you can, because so much of this was caused by overspending of our government. So just the fact that anybody can do one nice thing doesn't minimize the fact that prices are too high on goods that people have to have. This isn't a demand thing. This isn't the Sphere, once in a lifetime experience going out and buying eggs.
That was really cool.
Yeah, buying food to put on your table for the week. That is justifiably worthy of complaint.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, now kind of delving off into almost a segment of asides, I do have to ask Sam some questions here. The first one is, I know that you have not been out to the Sphere.
I have not.
Now, you too carries no interest. You probably before you start working at Oakworth couldn't have named 4 tunes by U2.
I still can't.
Well, there you have it. And although you've although you do this with me, and I like U2, and David McGrath, our man on the street down in Mobile, is a massive U2 fan, you still can't name 4 tunes.
They automatically put songs on your phone back in the day, and I still can't name 4 songs.
Well, let's not go there. That's an embarrassment for one of the better bands ever. Now, you obviously wouldn't spend money to go see U2. Now, if George Strait were going and playing at the Sphere, and you could get someone to take care of your daughter, what you thinking about a little trip to Vegas? That's a trip. You love trips. You've already mentioned it.
It is.
And then you get to see George Strait in the Sphere.
Look, that sounds awesome, except for the fact that I would rather spend my money doing something else. There's almost if that trip's going to cost a couple grand, probably said and done.
Yeah.
I would rather take even a 3-day trip somewhere and have more of a vacation than spending the bulk of the money just on a concert. To me, concerts are pretty low. I mean, look, they're fun. I would love to be there. I went to Red Rocks. I thought that was an amazing experience.
What'd you see there?
String cheese incident.
Oh, there you go.
So it was an awesome experience, but if I was going to have to spend thousands of dollars to do that again, I'd rather figure out a way to go back to France or something.
All right. So, kind of almost last question. I don't know how much time we have left, but we got to be nearing the end here. I've got to ask you this one as well. So we've talked about people spending a ton of money on experiences. I've done it by traveling to go see bands and music and all that stuff. You went to Europe last year.
Yep.
You look like you had a wonderful time at a Premier League game.
I did.
Drinks were flowing.
Yep.
Food was beyond
all
over the place. You were sitting in one of the skyboxes while the hoi polloi can't even get a pint inside the stadium, if I'm not mistaken.
That is correct.
So you were willing to pay for that type of thing. I'm willing to pay for this type of thing. What would you say the average American would rather spend their extravagance money on? Your friends.
I think traveling. I really do. I mean, we've seen this in the data of countries in Europe, and I keep just saying Europe. There's obviously other places, but the focus on Americans traveling to Europe, I mean, it's shown up in the economic data for Portugal, for Spain, for France, and for England, the amount of foreigners that are coming to these countries for trips. And I think that social media plays a big role in that. I mean, you see, I could tell you friends that I have that are in Europe right now. I mean, you see this.
Pierre?
Yeah, you see this comparison.
Like, Miss Pierre over there?
Yeah, sure. So I think that becomes these vacations, these big trips become a keeping up with the Joneses part of it, and just a generational change in where we find value. And I mean, I can listen to my music. I can get 60% of the way there. So I think my generation as a whole leans on traveling, especially foreign traveling or international traveling.
You know, I would tell you, my generation, at least my friends, people with whom I associate, I'd say it's kind of split. I mean, people still like to travel. They do that almost as a matter of course, but damn, you get a nostalgia act that comes through town, people will show up for that. I mean, they really will. I mean, that's and because of the way musicians are paid now, you're seeing more and more of these nostalgia acts come around. You know, 5-10 years ago,
royalties aren't coming through as much.
No, they're not coming through. I mean, the Connells, perfect band.
I saw Creed came to Birmingham.
I missed that one. The Connells are a perfect band. A band out of Raleigh. They had some albums, never quite made it as big as REM, which I think I have told you about at one point. REM. You didn't know who they were. And so the Connells, but all of a sudden they went on and got their other jobs. They had their lives about it, but then all of a sudden it's like, what are we doing here? I mean, reunion tour, and dropping. I mean, people paying $25 a ticket to cram 500, maybe 1,000 deep into an arena, a small arena or a small venue. These guys can pocket a few G and then be back in Raleigh on Monday.
Sounds great.
Well, so why wouldn't they do that? And so that's the reason why we're seeing a lot more of these sort of reunion tours, nostalgic type stuff. I mean, does anyone really need to go see Def Leppard and Poison again?
Probably not.
They seem to come to town every year, but they pack them all in. And so I'm telling you, I go to these places, I bring down the median age in some of them. And so I would say it's kind of a combination between travel, which people will do, and then also the music. I will tell you though, I don't know where sports fits in with me. Someone gives me a free ticket to some games down Tuscaloosa or even Auburn, I may or may not go.
Really?
Does that sound crazy?
See, I love going to games down in Auburn, but I mostly go when I'm not paying for tickets. I can't tell you the last time I...
And I tell you, I think it's probably just me just being more misanthropic than anything else. And then also the whole stadium experience has just gotten so cramped that it's not a lot of fun. So in the end, I'm not exactly sure what all we covered, just other than talking about the economic possibilities or ramifications, I guess is a better word, of how people are spending money and how it's really kind of changing.
Experiences, no matter what.
Experiences is really changing, and I don't think the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, does a very good job tracking that, or at least the percentage people are. American consumers are willing to pay on such things. I certainly think that the GDP report probably doesn't do a very good job with that. So, I think really Washington, the BEA, the BLS, the Census Bureau, all these organizations really better start rethinking their methodologies to better reflect the changing consumer patterns of the American consumer.
I agree.
All right. With that, guys, we always love to hear from you all. So if you have any questions or comments, please, by all means, let us know. You can always drop us a line at tradingperspectives@oakworth.com, or you can leave us a review on the podcast outlet of your choice. As always, if you're interested in reading more or hearing more of what we have to say or how we think, you can go to oakworth.com, OAKWORTH.com. Take a look underneath the Thought Leadership tab and find links to all kinds of exciting information, including previous episodes of Trading Perspectives, as well as previous issues of our newsletter/blog, Common Sense, as well as our quarterly magazine, Macro and Market. It's all of its very sundry components and parts, as well as other information from our investment committee, as well as Mac Fraser and the Advisory Services Group. All right, with that, I stumbled through that. But, Sam, do you have anything else to say on how you like to spend your money in an extravagant fashion?
That's all I've got.
That's all I've got today, too. Y'all take care.